This masterclass on indie film distribution with Eve Gabereau, who is co-founder and managing director of Soda Pictures. Please welcome Eve.
Hi, thank you for coming. I'm going to assume a certain level of industry knowledge on what distribution is, but just in case you don't know, we acquire films generally at a completed stage, all rights, including theatrical, DVD, VOD, television, ancillary for a territory, and then we distribute it across those platforms. So as it was introduced, I am the co-founder and managing director of Soda Pictures, which is a London-based independent distribution company, independent as opposed to a studio or major. We were established in 2002 by me and my business partner, Edward Fletcher. I am originally from Canada, moved to London in 1998 for a year, and somehow I'm still there. And Edward Fletcher is British, so together we formed Soda Pictures. But last year, we were acquired by a media group called Thunderbird Films, and we have become their film distribution division, which has allowed us to widen our scope and our territories. So before, we were just UK only as a territory that we bought and independent film, and now that we have a parent company who are a production company, we are starting to get involved in production and also acquire for Canada. So now we have offices in London, Toronto, Vancouver, and Los Angeles, which sounds rather grand, but actually my life hasn't changed that much since we merged with the bigger company. For this presentation today, actually, I thought I would divide it into three parts. One is an introduction about who we are and what we do. Second part, I have some case studies that we can look at of films we have released and a film we're working on releasing, and then afterwards open it to questions. But if you do have questions along the way, do put your hand up. So our parent company, which we are now part of, is made up of 6 companies. Thunderbird Films, who are television production, Film and Television Reunion, which are a television production company, Great Pacific also, documentary and television. Atomic is an animation studio, and we have a joint venture with Lionsgate for production, which through that, the directors came together with Alcon in Los Angeles to become the executive producers on Blade Runner that will be shot next summer. So there's a nice link between our parent company and us in terms of film, although personally I'll have nothing to do with Blade Runner sequel, which will be a very big project. It's still within our group. But as Soda Pictures, we release about 25 films a year, so as a result we have about 300 films in our library. Looking at the last year, these are some of the talent we've worked with. And last month, I was at the Spectre world premiere, and it struck me, sitting there in the crowd, that we do have 3 films with 3 Bond women. So that's quite nice for our library, putting them together. But it's something we do in independent distribution a lot, is look at our library, how can we reinvent it, how can we bring titles back, how can we work with directors again. You know, as an independent distributor, sometimes there's an element of working with new talent, and then they make their second film, their third film. They may work with us, but then by the third, fourth, they often go on to bigger distributors. So we are always trying to relate newer, maybe bigger films with some of the films we've worked on. This year in Canada, we released a number of British films and international films. Slow West with Michael Fassbender, or The Riot Club, a British political drama. Face of an Angel, which was a crime thriller by Michael Winterbottom. The Second Mother, which is a Brazilian film, Brazil's entry for the Oscars, that won at Sundance and at Berlin. And Yefret, which is an Ethiopian film, executive produced by Angelina Jolie, also won prizes at Sundance and Berlin last year or 2 years ago. And that Sugar film, which is a documentary about sugar and the perceptions of healthy and unhealthy food. So I hope this gives you a sense of some of the range of films that we work on, and these are more our UK focus, which is a bit more world cinema. These ones are slightly higher profile, bigger budget films. And these ones are some films that we've released in the UK in the last year. Gemma Bovary, which is an adaptation of Madame Bovary by the director of Coco Before Chanel. Just Jim is a first feature by the actor Craig Roberts. We actually co-produced it as well with the Welsh film agency, Kumiko, American, Japanese indie, Phoenix, German, The Wonder is Italian, Jauja, Argentinian, but starring Viggo Mortensen. And these are some of the highlights of the films we have coming up in the first quarter of next year. High Rise, which is Ben Wheatley's film. It's a cult film, let's say, with Tom Hiddleston and Sienna Miller. It had its world premiere at the Toronto Film Festival. It was in London, and then we will release it in Canada only, actually, in April, and in March it will come out by Studio Canal in the UK, and by Magnolia's cult label Magnet in the US around the same time. So we do try to coordinate our releases across those three territories, anyway, English-speaking. Disorder, which was in Cannes this year by Alice Winocour, who also wrote Mustang, which was just nominated for a Golden Globe. It's a kind of political thriller. It's got Matthias Schoenaerts in it, who does a lot of what we might call method acting in it. He really embodies this post-traumatic stress disorder from having, his character's been in Afghanistan, he comes back, becomes a bodyguard. And we feel like it's a film that with the right positioning, we can really make an impact with audiences, given the thematics and the actors and the director. Two other films we have coming up soon, Louder Than Bombs, Joachim Trier's film with Jesse Eisenberg and Gabriel Byrne, and Isabelle Huppert, and Rams, which played in the festival here yesterday, an Icelandic film that was in Cannes, won a prize, top prize for the Certain Regard section, and is Iceland's entry for the Oscars. I'll just quickly go through some of our library titles so you get a sense still of what we work on. We go back two films from the region, I guess, Wajda and Omar, that were both great titles to work on, very well received in the UK. Documentaries, if some of you are documentary filmmakers, we do quite a range of documentaries. Children's films, artist films. We also have an artist label called Soda Film and Art that you can see evolved out of just having artist films, and then we've created a label that's like a book series that all have publications with them, and we try to connect them with a gallery space as well for the release. These are some production projects we've worked on over the years. The top ones we worked on as executive producers, so really as consultants on the production, and then putting some money in, and then as distributors in the end. They're all fairly independent, all British, but we're quite pleased with some of the talent that came out of them. It was Andrea Riseborough's first film. Felicity Jones, who was nominated for an Oscar last year for Theory of Everything, was her first film. And then, so those were our executive producing ones at the top. At the bottom, these are some that we produced last year. Just Jim, which I've already mentioned. Remainder, which had its world premiere in London and will be in the Berlinale this year, based on a book called Remainder, starring Tom Surridge, by a visual artist turned director. Mark Lewis, which is a film we shot in Paris and Sao Paulo and Toronto. It's a very meditative look at cityscapes, and a film called By Ourselves with Toby Jones. In distribution, as I started talking about, we have, so the theaters are our main partners. We are a theatrical distributor, so our main goal when we buy a film is to get it out into theaters, and then we move on to DVD, digital, and television. So working at the bottom, these are our digital partner, our DVD partners. That's quite important. We are the boutique arm of Studio Canal and Lionsgate's DVD division, which is operated by Elevation. And as DVD is a slightly dying area, we're trying to figure out how we can make DVD still work. Well, so part of that art label that I mentioned is one way, collectible, beautiful packaging. And then as we move away from standard plastic DVDs that people are less and less interested in. We move into the digital realm, where we have direct deals with all of these partners, significantly, obviously, iTunes, Amazon, and Netflix being our main ones. And then we still sell as much as we can to our main TV partners, BBC, Channel 4, Film 4, and Sky. There is a increasing relationship between those two areas, particularly Sky. You can look at, for example, they have both an on-demand and television service. So that's just an overview of who we are and what we do. Any questions so far? No. So as I mentioned, one of the films that we released over the years, in this one, in July 2013, is Wajda, which I guess is a film everyone in this room either knows of or hopefully has seen. A Saudi Arabian film that had its world premiere at the Venice Film Festival in 2012. I remember there was a kind of sentiment around the film. People were saying, oh, there's this film from Saudi Arabia called, can't quite remember what it's called, something, can't quite pronounce it. There was this feeling of, it was a slightly marginal, maybe, like, just a film, maybe go check it out. And once you saw it with an audience, you could see that suddenly people were saying, have you seen that film from Saudi Arabia called Wajda? It's amazing. And it's where a festival can create a kind of aura around a film, and it was something to see it with an audience. So we ended up acquiring it from there, and so that's the end of August 2012 to July, we spent time trying to figure out what's the best way to position it, to release it, to work with the international partners to see how it's working. And in France, it came out a few months before us. It was doing very, very well. So we slowly put together the campaign around it, slowly built it. Sometimes we don't ever rush out films. It takes about 3 to 4 months. But in this case, we took quite a long time to preview it, to talk about it, to position it, to put the campaign together. And in distribution, we always talk about this thing, the distribution triangle, which is the combination of press, marketing, and exhibition, or the theater side. And it's a great thing when this all adds up, when the triangle is balanced. When it's not, there's always one component that doesn't quite work that can drag down the other sides. In this case, Wajda worked perfectly, really, for us. It had great reviews. It was a very marketable film, both in terms of the niche of world cinema and a more mainstream breakout audience who was interested in something new. The story of what is this film? What is it telling us? It's a female director. There was lots of interesting angles for us to work on. So sometimes we do and sometimes we don't. After a film is released, do exit polling or audience polling to figure out why did people come, what did they respond to. You spend months and months putting together this campaign, reaching out to people, and then when they do come, you wonder, what was it? Was it the thing we spent months agonizing over in time and money and precision, or was it something we just, an ad in the paper? You don't really know. So this is a kind of interesting survey that I thought I would just share to give you a sense of it. Obviously, it's not that many people, but it's one city polling and it's just at one screening and a group of people. So there's a kind of a base of people to draw conclusions from in London and a regional cinema in Nottingham. So the screening took place the day after the release, as I said, in London and in Nottingham. And the objective was to identify the audience profile for Wajda, which, of course, audience profiling is something we are always trying to do, especially in independent distribution. But there is, on one side, it's becoming more scientific, I would say, with digital data, but also people do different things than you expect, or the weather changes, or other things on. But our aim with this particular report, anyway, was the people who were there to find out why and how they got there, so how the audience got to hear about the film and why they chose to come and see it and what they thought of it. And the questionnaire was in 2 parts. The first section they answered before the film, and the second half after the film. So the results were that the film skewed female, 60%, and and mostly those aged 35 and over. The most represented group was 45 to 54, making up 33% of the audience, then 55 plus, and then under 35, and the average age 44, which I think setting out to, when we acquire a film, we think about a lot of things. We do think about who's the audience, how much do we think it can make across all those rights, theatrical, DVD, VOD, television. Then we run numbers, we think of films that are maybe similar to it, and we look how they did, and we create a kind of model that determines the amount of money that we would put up front and how much money we think we will spend in order to, in the end, hopefully make a profit for both us and to return to the producers. So we, as part of that, we do an audience profiling, and I think even abstractly, if you think about what Wajda is and what the pitch is, probably would have come up with that female skew, slightly older audience. But here it's proven through our sampling. And I think if you did look at our campaign, it was quite print heavy, quite radio heavy, which does appeal to that audience. We did do quite a lot of social media, but that's just a given, really. So it's where you take that campaign a step further. The audience were significantly more likely to frequent cinema, or were frequent cinema goers, 68%. Attending at least once a month. If you look at UK anyway, industry standards, people go to the cinema about twice a year. So people going to see this film, if they're going at least once a month, that is much more the national average. So these are people that are willing to take a chance, they've seen everything, they're more open, they're probably aware of what's coming out, they're reading things. So it's an audience, obviously, that's maybe already converted to seeing this type of film, but that's also really important to us, is that at least the core audience goes to see it, because if our core audience doesn't go see it, then it's hard to break out to that further audience, but if we're not even reaching our core, is when it starts to fall apart. So 33% visit less frequently, which I would probably say is attributable to, in this case, our niche marketing. So there we did a lot of work in Arab communities in the UK, and it was really interesting because we did some informal audience surveying, and there were a lot of Arab women and their teenage daughters coming to the cinema in groups. That doesn't really happen a lot to our films anyway. And it was quite funny phenomenon to watch because they were sitting separately. So all the girls would sit together and all the mothers together, but they were going together and leaving together and talking a lot about the film. So the film generates so much talk afterwards, which is also, I think, a key thing for word of mouth, provided it's positive. But even sometimes when it's negative, if there's a talkable result from the film, either you're silent because you're so shocked, or you just want to talk about it afterwards. Not shocked, obviously, in the case of this film, because that's a very happy ending, relatively happy. And then, even from us watching as the campaign was unfolding, we could see that it was very positive. Early polling was positive, and the reviews were unanimously very good. So then this is just kind of reconfirmed that you can see, so excellent, the majority is excellent in terms of people's reaction to the film, or very good, very few good, and no fair or poor. And would they recommend it to their friends equally? I think this, as we said, this part was before, was what they were thinking, reaction. So that was after, yeah, and then would they recommend it? It's even higher, maybe even higher, even if they, so if we see, come back. Oops, sorry. So if we see there, that's their reaction, but still the recommendation rate is very high. So again, this is a very powerful tool in distribution, word of mouth. Again, as long as it's positive. And then I thought for a second case study, just to give you a sense of what we do on a daily basis, is out of Cannes this year, we bought a film called Rams, as I mentioned, that was screened here yesterday. And it's a film that, again, I think the pitch is quite difficult. If you see the positioning statement, it's the story of two estranged brothers who are forced to reconcile in order to save their livestock and ultimately their livelihoods. So really, it's a film about old men and sheep. And when you first hear that pitch, you don't get so excited. But then it showed at Cannes, everyone was really responding well to it, and it was starting to sell. We bought it there, although we were aware of it ahead of time, and then it went on to win an award, and it's gone on to win awards at almost every festival it plays in. Great reviews and a great response. Our UK release date will be in February, and the US is in February, 2 days before us, actually. So we are coordinating, which is also a good thing and a bad thing. It's great because we can coordinate English language publicity and online buzz, but there's only one director. He can only be in one place at one time, and obviously the US is really important. But we're very fortunate that the director came and had a screening with us last week for a BAFTA, the British Academy Awards. He came and had such a great time that he's decided he's going to come and do another screening for us in the lead up to the awards season. So that's good. But it is Iceland's entry for the Oscars. So on one level, we're counting on it having a BAFTA and an Oscar nomination, which would be around this time. BAFTAs are the 14th of February, and the Oscars are a week later. You can't build your campaign on it or without it because you don't know, so we just have to hope, and then if we don't, we just carry on saying it was Iceland's entry for the Oscars and just go with the value of the film. So, when you're working with lead times, you have to have things in place now for February, so we're just working around it, and they've done the same in the US, and they're the ones who are really pushing for it. But you can get very caught up in award accolades. They are important, I think, but they're not always the most important. We identified a couple of audiences for the film, the main one being probably very similar to that WAJDA audience, maybe not so much female skewed, but older, cinema-going, cinephile, cineliterate, interested in this kind of film. They probably saw Force Majeure last year, or this year, films like that maybe, and in the cinema. We have put together this presentation for the British Film Institute, who have something called the P&A Fund, where they have 3 tiers of funding for additional marketing and promotions for films, for independent films that are not British. There is a British strand. The British Film Institute supports British films, but they also support independent film, and it's a really interesting part of what we do because it's a fund of quite a few £1 million per year that is available to distributors to increase awareness and campaign outreach for independent films, no matter where they're from. They have to just feel that there is possibly a breakout potential with the film, or that you will reach another audience with their help. They don't, obviously you have to apply, you have to present, and there are 3 types of funding. One is called New Models, which is up to £100,000. There's just breakout funding, which is a film that if you did more marketing, the film could potentially break out. That's sort of between 50 and 150, and then a British breakout, which is above that. All of it has to be match funded by the distributor, so as you apply, you have to think, how much do I want to spend? Because then I have to match whatever they contribute. Obviously, you get double your campaign for half. If the film does succeed beyond expectation, it is a repayable out of theatrical receipts, but it takes, you're in first position of recoupment. It's a very positive fund. So we went to them to say, okay, we're going to cover our core audience, which is one I mentioned earlier, but what we'd like is our new model is to create an impact marketing campaign for 3 other groups that we think will enjoy the film if we can speak to them directly through marketing and how we reach them in cinemas. So these are the 3 groups we identified, this kind of 25 to 35-year-old, what we call an urban hipster, socially conscious, concerned with sustainable living, organic produce, who should respond to the thematics, word of mouth, location, and the Scandinavian side of the film. Which may not be an obvious link, but it is about it's living in a rural community, your livelihood. It's about sheep. Sheep produce wool. Wool is all about sustainable living, which I'll get into how we've kind of captured this audience, or we hope to anyway. Then there's a 60-plus audience that, because it is about older brothers, kind of that third phase of life, reconciling what's important in the end. When you start thinking, there is a real kind of cathartic part of the film and family values that we like to work on. And I don't know if you know the film 45 Years, but it's been incredibly successful in the UK this year with Charlotte Rampling, and it is about a couple celebrating their 45th anniversary and redefining their lives and rethinking about what their whole marriage meant to them. And it's on one level a very sad film, but it's also beautifully told and really strong, and it's got up to almost £2 million at the box office, which is far exceeds their expectations on it. The distributors, Curzon Artificial Eye, they did an incredible job at mobilizing this target audience, but they also have a distribution model because they own a chain of cinemas, and they also have something called Curzon Home Cinema. So they can put films, all their films, they do what we call day and date, which is a premium digital platform, as well as in theaters, which precludes having it in multiplexes, but it can be in all independent screens and online for transactional download. And if you think about getting to £2 million on an independent film about a couple at their 45th anniversary doing that well, it is amazing, the power of the media, really, and of a good film, but also not needing to always rely on traditional models, which is what this new models is about. And then we're saying our third audience that we're reaching out to for this film is this rural community. So it's rural communities who may have gone through the dilemmas that happen in this film, the sheep farming. There was a foot and mouth epidemic in the UK about 10 years ago that really questioned, how vulnerable farming is, and has changed the way I think farming policy works, but also how farmers are very vulnerable in subsidies, and also how they protect themselves. So I think this is a film that, although it's very funny, it could speak to them, and we could organize some local screenings that can work very, very well. But you just have to get organized and reach them. I don't know, has anyone seen Rams? No? Okay. I thought I'll just show the trailer so you can have a look at it, and then we can talk about, from an independent distribution point of view, why we would use this trailer or not. This is actually the American trailer, it's not ours, and I'll explain why it's not ours after. Let's see if it works. I have to just go to the website. Should work. It's not really R.
Enginn á stærri þátt í lífi þjóðar, samtvinnast kindin bóndans starfi. Og lífi. Ef leiðinni vel var sól og bjart í sinni, svartnætti ef það þrengdi að fjárhjörðinni.
Þetta maður sem kom með einhvern andskotin í Frollhundarnas skita.
Já, ég hef nú ekki talast í 40 ár. Það er nú varla að taka upp á í úr þessu.
Við erum sko bræður.
Og hvað kettlingar?
Kitti var stundum með ráskonur, það er flóðum alla frá honum.
Ég er ekki með góða fréttir. Það komið upp ríða hjá bróðinum.
Það ekki bara líklegt að verði að skora niður hjá okkur báðum.
Þetta í fyrsta sinn sem veikin kemur upp í dalnum.
Við greiðum fyrir hverja kind sem er fargað. Hefur eitthvað hugsað í framtíðina?
Veistu hvað þú búin að gera?
Ég vil við stoppum þess að vitlis af.
Og hvernig hefur við að gera það?
Við bara neitum að skera niður.
Þú ert ábyrgur fyrir bróðinu.
Hvar eru kindurnar?
Kitty, það var að hjálpa mér. Þeir eru að koma.
So that is the US trailer. You can see it was 2 minutes and 6 seconds. So we are going to, as much as I like that trailer, we are working on just a teaser campaign up until Christmas, and then after Christmas we will look to release our trailer probably first week of January. So that gives us a month to play it in theaters and also to seed it on the internet to the right places. But we'd like to add UK quotes, which is a natural thing, but you have to gather the quotes, and you gather them by having press screenings, by having events, so we're just doing that now. We have quite a few. We'd like to make it under 2 minutes. We felt, as much as I like the trailer, it maybe gives away too much but doesn't have quite enough mystery, so we're going to try to just make it a bit shorter so that the message is there, a bit more on the campaign that we're running, and just tighten it up a bit for us. Then we looked at the creative, and so the left one is the Italian, and then the French, and then the Spanish, and then the American. So you can see the first two, they took that main photo that's in the Spanish one, but then you can see they've now circled and added the two brothers' names to kind of maybe show a bit more that there's a narrative in that photo. The Americans, you can see they've gone for a much more humorous and kind of maybe impactful, because you look at it, and you do look at it. The other one, you could dismiss it maybe. I don't know. I mean, it's a great image because it's a bit blurry, sorry, but one of the sheep is falling over. It is quite funny, but I can see why the Americans have gone kind of more that route, which is a composite. There's obviously no shot like that in the film as a composite. And then the one next to it is a Japanese teaser campaign, which is a hilarious dialogue that they've created about the two brothers not speaking to each other. The top one is a teaser campaign that comes out of the Italian one, but you can see people are starting to go with this jumper sheep. And the bottom two are a teaser campaign that the US and we will run something similar. Then we were looking at some knitted posters which exist. Actually, Sightseers did one, and Fargo did one, and there is a company in the UK where you can send them your design, and they will send you back whatever it is knitted. So you could either get it printed to look like knitting, or you could actually get a physically knitted poster, which we're going to try out as a competition. But we asked two agencies. This is another thing we do. Obviously, it's in the UK. There are two things we do with creative for our posters or for our key design. Is we have to change it inevitably from the international campaign, because for the very logical or logistical reason is that the rest of the world is portrait, and for some reason the UK is landscape. So no matter what, we have to change it a little bit, and sometimes we change it a lot, depending on what we feel like. So we asked two very different agencies. Yeah, I'm going to have to open these separately. Sorry. So we asked two separate agencies to pitch for us. So this is the kind of pitch we would get in from. Let's open this one first. Where is it? Sorry, yeah, this one. Can we see that? Uh-oh. Well, there we go. Okay. Okay, I'll just show it to you like that then. It's not on my screen now, so I'll just look on your screen. So that's one. This is a very traditional route, I think an adaptation. We showed those international ones that we looked at earlier, and we asked, these are also, it says placeholder quotes, so they're just really to get a sense of how we could change the composition or just even the typeface to make it different for the UK. We could still single out the brothers. They've gone for something like that, like that, like that, that, that. So you can see how, I'll open this one. Then we had another agency who worked very, very differently. Sorry, I'm not quite sure how to do this now. My computer has done something very strange. Maybe if I do this. Okay, there we go. Sorry. Here we go. And I'll show you another route that we... Okay. So this was the creative brief. They said, first we will show you some of our background and our experience, and then we'll show you some concepts that we've come up with for RAMs and their theories behind them. So this is, when we look at agencies to work with, we do look at the work that they've done. Does it fit? We change agencies depending on the film. Sometimes we work with the same agency. Sometimes we change depending on what the film is. So this is what they sent us, their samplings. These are not necessarily films. Sorry, I don't know how to make it smaller. No? They're not necessarily ones that were published in the end. They could have been just pitches, but these ones were. They do music, they do culture. They had a kind of interesting vibe for that first secondary market that we were talking about. And then they came up with, and again, they're artists, this agency, so they do the kind of sketch before, and on the right-hand side is sort of the look and feel that the final poster would have, and the left is a sketch of what they're thinking. So you have to, and it talks about the valley and why they did that. So we would read through all this. This is another one they came up with, dividing fence idea, the houses really using the landscape. This one, which looks a bit maybe too alpine for an Icelandic landscape, but they would use obviously stills from the film, so it would have the right feel. Then maybe going a bit more graphical, using the RAM as an M, which I thought was quite clever. Head-to-head, so bringing in the two brothers, we felt like maybe the US campaign only is missing one of the brothers, and that's quite a key part of the film. In distribution, you have to decide how much do you want to give away, how much do you actually need to say, just to get people to be interested in the film. There's this one of they call the domino effect. This one of an old book cover, which although it's not really a film campaign, I think it's a great alternative campaign or teaser. And then there's the jumper idea again. And then this idea of a map, putting the sheep into the map. And so then we went away. See if I can get this back here. Okay. And we started thinking about the creative and developing it. And let me see. Sorry. Get this one back. So looking at those two agencies and different routes to take, and maybe at the end of the presentation I'll show you where we're at with the teaser, and you can give me a thumbs up for the final poster, or if you think we should take a different route, because it is one of those things where we make decisions in the office, obviously based on our expertise, our knowledge of the audience, and working with agencies, but it's always nice to get a new audience perspective. And one of the things we're doing on RAMs, again, which is really important, particularly for an independent film distributor as opposed to a studio where their resources are greater than ours. We try to make our P&A spend, which is our prints and advertising spend, it's the budget for the release, go as far as we can. So with this film in particular, as I said, we're trying to join up with a lot of different organizations. These wool organizations. Maker University is in the UK. It's an organization that's all about kind of back to basics, making things. They've got flat pack farms for your urban garden, things like that. Really interesting, going into the farmers markets groups, the slow food movement, the campaign for wool, which is something that is Royal Society, and they have all sorts of different initiatives, working with animals, working with older demographics, go to Iceland. So this is giving a look and feel. So really trying to get into this world of knitting, jumpers, That is actually in central London, where those sheep are in October. It's part of this campaign for wool, but they have year-round initiatives, so we're working with them. As I said, that on the right, your right, is that flat pack farm. So just this idea of crafts. Liberty has a craft blog that has hundreds of thousands of followers. In fact, that far right, fabrics are inspired by Icelandic landscapes. So that was a nice connection. So they talk a lot about it, making things on your own, all this revolution around food and organic and farmers markets. Win a trip to Iceland, which we are putting together through Visit Iceland, Icelandair, and Icelandic Embassy. Again, we talked about all the awards it's won and how every festival it goes to, it seems to garner some kind of further exposure. Then that's sort of the marketing side of it. And then on the press, it's a hard one for press, I guess. Once you get beyond, it's an Icelandic film, it's about sheep farmers. What else can we do? It's a great film. So we rely on the reviews, obviously, and the UK is a very press-intensive country, both online, in print, and radio as well. So we're just trying to figure out what the press angles are, what our campaign would be. So we're looking at different publicity campaign, the long lead. The more we can get, the more exposure we can get through the awards. Some of the different pitches that we're going for, so we can get some broadsheet coverage and radio. Some of the preview screenings we would do. This is something that we didn't put together, but it just showed the array of marketing that you can have on the film. Then the third part, as I said, is the sales, the theatrical sales. So having theater reach. So this is our list of this 24 London plus 17 regional. We're looking to have 20 or 30 on opening, and hopefully throughout the run of the film, which is about 3 months, it will visit 150 to 200 screens. Some of them playing for short periods of time, some of them hopefully running for up to six to 8 weeks, which is possible even if it goes down on limited shows. And these are all, if you don't know the sites, they're all independent sites, which is different from the multiplex, as I said, which we'll get onto why there are no multiplexes in here, although it could potentially have played multiplexes. And then another part of the modeling that I said when we put together a release strategy, we look at comparable films that are fairly recent. We try not to be more than 3 years old, because the market is changing so fast that to start basing your own analysis of a film on previous numbers can be problematic. And this is also just theatrical. We also tried to model out what DVD sales were and if it sold to television, and what we think the VOD number maybe was. And we look at other films that are coming out on that day, and are they competitive to us or not? We've already set the date, but we will have set it based on looking at that. So they're all films with audiences, but maybe not the exact same audience as Rams. And then trailering, so from now, really, Grandma came out yesterday, so from there, those are the studio films we can trailer with, the mini majors we can trailer with. Room is in that list that opened the festival here, and then some more indie ones, and all of those, in theory, should play the trailer before. This is some of the reaction. We've had exhibitor screenings, so just showing from the main circuits to the specialty sites are all very interested in it. We do a media plan, which is putting together how much we'll spend on marketing, which we work with an agency. And then at this point, when we put this presentation together, we were considering a digital release. Now we really are going for one, which is a premium VOD. So ultra VOD is if you release it digitally before the theatrical, and premium VOD is when you release it at the same time, and then regular VOD is when you release it at the same time as your DVD. It's quite a controversial, if there can be a controversy in distribution, area, because the theaters don't like it, but audiences do. There is a time where people expect to be able to access a film when they hear about it, and if they can't, then they will find it through other means. So there are certain films where we make a decision: would we rather have it legally and easily available for transactional on theatrical when you get so much exposure, or would we rather wait 3 or 4 months. It's actually 4 months, 16 weeks in the UK, and 3 months in North America. So it's quite a long time. But on the other side, it's not that long. People get busy. 4 months is a short time, But it depends on what phase of life you're in. I think when you're 25, 4 months is a long time. Maybe you just want it now. So we have decided that we will do what is called a day and date strategy on it, a premium VOD window, where we will have it available on all 5 of these platforms at the same time as the 30 sites that we plan to open on, and the 150 to 200 sites that we hope it will play in. And we don't think it will cannibalize each other's audiences, but as part of this campaign, we will do an insight report. We'll hire an agency to track which marketing initiatives led to more activity online and how much we think the VOD was supported by our theatrical campaign, and how much by partnering with these sites in advance, if they market to their audiences, does it increase really revenues rather than decrease. And that's really for these secondary audiences that we were talking about, that they're not the cinema goers, so if they're not going to go, but they're still interested in the publicity around it, they may just watch it at home. And then, as I said, we've got 2 agencies now working on it, who are going to track and do analytics on the data around the film, which is really valuable to us for future releases. And it's an increasingly important part of independent film distribution, I think, and it's how we can try to model our acquisitions as well. Or, if you pitch a film to me and I say, I don't want everything to be so how many, who's your target audience and how many admissions do you think we're going to get and how much do you think it's going to sell? But there is an element of that when we assess a project, especially if it's finished. Early on, this is part of your packaging, I'm sure, of your producers. But we do need to keep these things in mind. There is obviously that kind of wonderful side of a film that's great, that surprises you, but we still need to kind of keep up on that. And then that is the end. So I just wanted to give you an overview on all the elements that come into buying a film, building your library, having your library, then analyzing what you have released, and then put into a release itself across those areas. So that's what we do. If you have any questions.
Previously, before you got into the details of the distribution of RAM, yes, you said something that you were working on a film as a consultancy company, and then you went into producing the film. No?
Did I say that? I think what I was talking about, sure, I see what you mean. When there was a slide with two parts of production. So the top ones were executive producing. So a lead producer came to us with the project early on and said, would you be the distributor of these films? It can help us package it and get the funding from either their private investors or public funders. And we said yes, but then as a result, we didn't just wait for the film to be finished and delivered and then pay and then go through our independent distribution rollout. We became involved, script suggestions, casting, edits, on set. So there were lots of different elements. So those four films that were up there, we provided an executive producer. We ruled over a number of years. Whereas the other set, we moved then into actively producing, so raising money ourselves, beyond the distribution, putting money in, working on the films, putting crew in place.
So he first came in to you for pre-sale, for pre-distribution?
I guess so, yeah, but it was UK. They were British films. So British films, to be packaged to receive British funds, need to have a distributor on board for the most part. So that was the initial discussion, and then that led to us co-producing.
My question is, what is a consultancy company, if you don't mind my asking?
I think, I don't know that I said consultancy company, we just had consultancy services, which were looking at the script, looking at the cast, looking at the edits, working with the producer on the market value of the film, finding a sales agent, discussing what's the best world premiere for it, what's the best positioning, who we should bring on for set visits. So that's we provided the consultancy in that case. We were the production consultancy partner.
How much does it cost to go to a consultancy company to help you go forward with your project?
Well, in that case, it doesn't cost anything because we are providing the service to have the best film we can have. Actually, we pay because we pay to acquire the film. We have a minimum guarantee that we pay that we put up. Or sometimes they are straight distribution, meaning we don't put money up front and then we split all royalties 50-50. But if you were a producer and you went to hire someone, it doesn't really work that way. I mean, I'm sure there are production consultancy companies, but they would hopefully be raising money for you. In our case, it's just a service we would provide as the distributor because our aim would be to have the best film possible at the end. So there's no fees.
Okay.
Well, I mean, there's fees, obviously, that come along with when you distribute the film.
Thank you.
It's not completely volunteer work.
My question was regarding the audience survey screenings, and how do you advertise that without affecting the average age?
Well, those are just public. You go on the day, because that was on the Saturday. It was open on Friday, so you just go to a cinema, any cinema. We pick 2 at random, and you pick people at random, and you give them, you say, do you mind filling this out? Before and after, and then we take it. But when we do preview screenings, or talker screenings, then we work with a company called See Films First. They organize it, they get a screening. Sometimes they have a pool of people, they invite them until it's full. Sometimes they know what the film is in advance, sometimes they don't. But obviously there are people who want to go to preview screenings.
Right.
You don't just pull them off the street. Sometimes people do that. But that's more of a studio model. But when we do previews, hopefully it's just a cross-section again. And then you would never do an analysis like the audience for this film is this age and this gender, because in that case we would just be looking at what did you respond to, what didn't you, what should we work on. Oh yeah, I didn't show you my final Rams poster. Should I a little bit? Let's see, that you can be my audience research. It's not our final one, but it's one that we've been using as a teaser as a result of all those. Oh, that's not it. Just a sec. Where is it? We can get that back up. No? Do I have to pull it? Oh, no. I have to pull it over. So there's one that we're working on. Instead of the American teaser campaign, you can maybe close your eyes, and if you like it, hands up. If you like it, hands up. If you don't, would you want to go see that film? No? I mean, that could be a regional thing. I don't know. In Britain, it feels very cabiny, it's warm, it's inviting. But it's true, it doesn't bring in the landscape that we talk so much about being important to the film. So at this point, we have all these long lead magazine deadlines that we have to get in before Christmas. So from all those concepts I showed you earlier, this is what it evolved into. So I don't even think there was one like that. But there was a process. And there you can see now we've integrated in cinemas and on demand, which will be a very important part of our campaign. Other questions?
I have a question. Just wanted to if you want, if you care to market it, it looks funny that it shows some sort of like clear kind of humor. And I was wondering, do they try to kill each other in the film or something?
No. We have, it's because the trailer does seem like they do.
Because if they do, then it should be in.
Yeah, they don't. They don't. No. They just don't speak to each other, even though they live next door to each other. In fact, they have to help each other to save the sheep. So, no, they're trying to get rid of the authorities from Reykjavik who are interfering. Yeah.
I definitely go watch it.
Okay.
Hello. Okay, right here. Just going back to Wajda, because I mean, we have from what I actually believe in, one of the problems we have in the Arab world is that we have little data of Arab films being distributed. So we don't know how much they make, what's happening. So there's no map of value in the films in the market. So just wondering, in the case of Wajda, for example, how much it made? Did you just play in London?
Yeah, so there was a slide there that had comparables for Rams, actually, and Wajda was one of them. It did about, that's track number, that's about 400, so maybe 450.
Just London?
450,000 at the box office, but we get a third of that.
That's UK only?
UK only.
Okay.
And then there's DVD. We sold it to Channel 4 for quite a good license fee, and it has ancillary rights. But that's just the UK. In France, I know that it's done about 500,000 admissions, which is coming up on 2 million euros, plus all the ancillary. For data like that, it does exist. It would take someone to compile it all, and it would be good, like another film we released, Omar, it was released around the world. Someone could compile all and the sales agent, Omar was actually, and Wajda, both the same sales agent.
Who would be the best source of that?
Well, there are two things. It could be your regional film body should have data on this that they're collating, but also the sales agent on these films will have all the different territories. So, for example, both Wajda and Omar were the Match Factory, so they would have data on that. And some of it is public. Box office records are public. DVD units is public information. How much people get per unit varies depending on what time of the release it was. They start expensive and they get cheaper. VOD, there's very, very little data on it. Over-the-top services like Netflix and Amazon Prime, no data. They give you a license fee. But unlike television, who give you ratings, they don't. So it's true, there's a lot missing, but there is also a lot available, but it does take someone to put them together. And if it's different sales agents, then you would have to get someone regionally to I'm sure there are studies.
And
definitely.
I'm sorry, just to, when did you move on to Omar, and at what stage did you acquire rights, or did you start from
Omar.
beginning? Or?
No. I mean, Wajda, as I said, we bought it at Venice. Omar, we saw it at Cannes, so that was its world premiere. And soon after Cannes, we bought it. There was we didn't buy it at Cannes, but there was a bit of discussion after, but very soon after. I think by Toronto, we had it, so that was its next big festival. So Cannes is in May, and Toronto's in September. So again, these things do take a lot of time, but equally, if a film is around for more than 3-4 top markets, it becomes harder to sell. No matter how long you took, how much you spent, how much effort, it is a reality. Wajda and Omar? Yeah, someone asked me that earlier today. It had nothing to do with, Wajda is a special case because it was the first film ever from Saudi. It was by a female director. It had all these kind of groundbreaking things, I think, in cinema history, and it really felt exciting because of that. But if it didn't deliver as a film, that would have been irrelevant or problematic even, and nobody would have cared. But because that just reinforced why you should see it, or it started people talking about it, and then the film delivered. And I think with Omar, it has nothing to do with it being, as it turns out, the first fully funded Palestinian film, or Oscar nominated. The reason it is because it's a fantastic film that has a heart, a soul, political message. It's a really interesting film. I don't know, Hani's not here, but he is around. But Hani really was very involved, and Walid, who's the lead actor in the film, they were very involved in the release with us. And we did an interesting, over one weekend, we had 3 screenings. One was just at a mainstream cinema with an audience who walked up, bought a ticket. We had one that was with a Palestinian audience that were invited, but it was paid for tickets, and we sort of had tiered tickets that were £25, £50, and £100, and people were actually complaining that all the £100 tickets were sold out. They didn't want to buy the £25 tickets, or the £50 tickets. They wanted to buy the £100 tickets. We said, we actually just made that up. There was no hierarchy in the cinemas. We're like, okay, well, you can buy the £100 tickets. And so that had one that also was very glamorous. Everyone came. It was in Mayfair. It was a beautiful event. We had a dinner after. It was great. And then we had a third screening, which was Hani's suggestion, which was in the Jewish Cultural Centre, in a real intellectual North London group of people wanting to talk about the political side of the film, as opposed to maybe before it was about the love story or just the film in general or world cinema. And we entered into this long discussion that was like 2 hours with Hani and Walid and this kind of North London Jewish intelligentsia. It was amazing, I have to say. And I may not have done that as a distributor. I may not have either come up with that myself or dared to, because it was their suggestion, we did it. And it really, it just took the film to a whole different level of discussion. And you could do that in London, I suppose. Maybe there are certain places you couldn't. So, obviously as a Canadian in London, we work with world cinema. We do work with a lot of political topics or difficult subjects, and we try to stretch that and be part of the campaign. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. I'm Muhammad Awad from the Sudanese Filmmaking Association. concerning the wonderful speech that you gave us, I'm giving something different because my nation is really different, very dense in content to produce films, and especially documentary films. Wide range of nature, differences, different tribes, different people, and a country that's suffering from political interventions. So those places are very rich to produce films, especially documentaries. But the problem that even though we have a wonderful, talented filmmakers in Sudan, but we are not able to promote our productions overseas or to cooperate with reputable distributors.
Yeah.
So what's the clue?
I don't know what you're...
What's the clue to be able to promote our culture and those contents?
I think there's a lot of gatekeepers, clearly, and it can be very difficult. That's why forums like this, regional forums with regional focuses, are great. Then you have a chance to really focus on things, but then you have to choose what's the best of these, that will then go on to get a sales agent, that will go on to festivals and distribution. So there are a lot of that. It's hard to do it by yourself and get noticed, it is true. And the less developed your industry, the harder it is as well. So recommendations, so easy to say, make a great film, but it's true, these films do, it depends. It can happen that your film just needs to be seen by the right people, and I think that's really important, that you think your film will work, that you understand where your film will work and why, and have realistic expectations of it. As I said, distributors like us, we do try to work on films. We've worked on films from Chad, from Ethiopia. We do work on films that maybe where the industries aren't as developed. The first Saudi film, it wasn't even released in Saudi, because there's no cinemas. We had to qualify for the Oscars to have one screening. So it was in an embassy, and then it became that embassies is not considered Saudi soil. And so then we had to move it to where it was Saudi soil, but part of the embassy. It was just really complicated, but I think it was a German embassy because it's a German co-producer. And then that had to be kind of quiet because the press couldn't go, but the press wanted to. This is the fun side of distribution. But there's a sad reality too to distribution, is that as much as we want to carry on working the way we have for the last 10 years, it's really incredibly difficult to make any money or to make any kind of impact and to get into theaters or to stay for any meaningful amount of time. So I think digital can be a great equalizer and a great access to audiences, but also there's a danger that there's too much. It's not coordinated enough. There's too much emphasis on the bigger titles and not enough on the smaller. But in the way that Amazon has been, or iTunes has been fantastic for independent music, that you're on a big band and then it suddenly leads you to an indie band and you can listen to them right there and then. It should have this knock-on effect. But I think there will be a kind of more curatorial move towards digital content online. So films will be, there might be the best of festivals or the best of this or a critic's favorite films for a certain period of time, just things like that. And if you can find champions for your films, I guess. But getting them made is a hard part. And I think events like this, for this region, are very good to professionalize and grow and develop. So,
Thank you.
Lobby for more support to, yeah.
Let's suppose, for example, you acquire a film like that has no past in terms of...
like which one, sorry?
Like Almad or Ram, that has no spread in terms of, no past in terms of like, and by some miracle, it just happens to have like an amazing, incredible audience and you feel you're able to distribute it like a Hollywood movie or something. Then what would you do, for example?
Yeah, that doesn't really happen because I think if it's that big, it will get a bigger distributor and it will get that level. There are films sometimes that you pick up that do better than expected, but generally I see a film finished, so I know what its potential is. And if it's going to break out, do better than expected, maybe a film like Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, which we didn't release, Studio Canal, but I think they thought it would do a couple million. It went on to do, I think, between 10 and 15 million. So this is a complete breakout, but you don't do anything different. You do the campaign that you set out to do. I mean, that's the best scenario in distribution, is you spend the same that you need to get it out. but it just does better. It's a very different model. You know, the topic is indie film distribution, and studio film distribution is so very different. I mean, on some films, there's such a formula that if you have this cast and this budget and this marketing spend and this reach, you will make this much. They know to the penny. Ours is a little bit less scientific and a lot more whimsical, I think. So it's harder to build a model. But it doesn't really happen on that. I mean, there are bigger films that need bigger budgets that work with bigger distributors, and smaller films that are smaller budgets. Maybe the bottom line, I will bet studios lose a lot of money on these huge films that even if they're successful, still. I mean, Imitation Game is maybe a good example, again, of a small British indie film that exploded. Everyone wanted to see it globally. It was a phenomenon that had a more art house distribution style, but it had studio level numbers.
And how did it do it? Like, did the distribution company sell the rights? Did it, like, practically speaking, what happened? If, for example, a certain distributor has a certain covers a certain territory or a certain amount of theaters, and then there's demand on the market that requires more spread, then what happens? Do they collaborate with another distribution company that has
Sure.
sort of like...
You know, independent scene is much more fragmented. It's territory by territory. It's not joined out. The languages are different. The campaigns are different. The timings are different. Studios tend to link it all up because they do it all centralized. Yeah, I think I am going to have to end there because I've got this note. But I'm here if anyone wants to ask me questions after. Thank you for coming.